Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Okay, we went to Wicked.
It was so fun.
It was so fun. We went on a weeknight, a school night.
I know. We were
A
crazy.
school night at 7:30. I'm so proud of us. We got dolled up. We had our picture taken in front of the witch, which was very important. We had an amazing dinner.
Yes.
And then we sat by the cutest girl of all time in her sparkly shoes.
I know. She was probably, what, like 12?
Oh my gosh, yes. And it was her first time at the theater. She gave me her life story at intermission.
She was so
I
cute.
just love her. So, what a precious little girl. It was so much fun. What did you think?
I mean, obviously I loved it. I've been listening to the soundtrack nonstop since we went.
You need to listen to the soundtrack also for Legally Blonde, the musical. It's amazing.
Oh, okay.
It's so good. And also Six. That was the one I was telling you about last night.
Oh, yeah.
Epic.
No, but I have been singing in my car to Wicked.
Tell them about the realization that we had in the beginning of the musical.
You are Glinda.
Yeah, minus the total idiocy, right?
Yes. And I'm more like Alphaba.
Yes, but with more social skills.
With more social skills. And yes. And I'm not green.
And you are not green. No, you're a lovely shade today, I must say.
So today. That's telling.
You look beautiful.
Yesterday I was ghostly pale.
Yeah, you weren't feeling
sickly looking.
Absolutely. But no, I loved it. The music was amazing. And then all of a sudden I get this like little nudge from Nat in the first 20 minutes and she goes, "It's like us." It's like us. And I start giggling because she's so right. It's us. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yes, like how bubbly Glinda is.
Toxic positivity.
Oh yeah. I was like, this is us. It was the black cat and golden retriever.
It was. I know. That's right.
So I actually loved it because, and obviously my therapist brain, counselor brain, went into all the things. And, you know, when you watch The Wizard of Oz, Alphaba is so evil.
Oh,
but yeah. You watch Wicked and there's so much more behind the story. And so it just goes to show sometimes a little empathy can go a long way. A little understanding of where someone comes from can go a long way. Things that they've been through.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I know it's just a play, but it's, you know, it still points out how important empathy is.
Oh.
And understanding people.
Yes. And how I think you can be different and actually be really great together.
Yes.
That's what I kind of love about their friendship is they have an understanding of their differences at some point after the initial clash, right?
Exactly.
So,
you and I never clashed though.
No, we were love at first sight. I don't
That was the difference with
even know how to fight with you. I don't know how I would even do that.
I know.
You know, we had a great time. We need to do that more. Oh, and then, you know, we're true crime girls, so we are thinking about things. So I have to just tell y'all one funny thing that happened. So I'm running like 10 minutes after Nat. And so she waits on the corner for me because we're both directionally challenged. And so I get in, she jumps in my car. I park right by her car, like one aisle over.
Yeah.
And after Wicked, we go and get in our cars and immediately call each other because we're, you know, not done hanging out. And then the same Camry cut us both off. So like you yelled and then I yelled.
I yelled and you're like, oh, they just cut me off too. I just yelled first.
It was just
but they cut you
funny.
Off first.
The same car pissed us both off in the parking garage, but
I was
what a great midweek break. So we're gonna do that more often for sure.
Yes. Well, maybe not midweek. We were talking about doing maybe the Nutcracker on the weekend, so we're not so tired.
We did so good, and Yeah, I'm thinking a weekend is better because we were barely staying awake. I thought you were gonna fall asleep on my shoulder.
I did so good though.
You did extremely well. You were less tired than me leaving.
I know.
So today we are going to get back into boy band Ponzi scheme part two.
Okay, so I have to tell you, I actually watched the thing.
What did you think?
Oh, so many things. Maybe I should wait till after you're done.
Yeah,
I'll
so you can
sprinkle
see
it
what
in.
order I do.
Yeah, because I have no idea where you're going today. So maybe I'll share after. But I will say at the end of that
Mhm.
documentary, I felt really sad.
You know what? That's actually the perfect start
Yeah. Okay, great.
because here's where I want to start us today. So Lou Pearlman, I'm going to talk about the end of him.
Okay.
So the end of him. The end of him.
Literally.
That could go a lot of different ways. But anyway,
Right.
where we left off last episode, it's 2001, 9/11. Only planes in the sky are fighter jets, Lou Pearlman's jet, and Air Force One. That's the kind of power and sway this guy had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then if you cut to 2016, Lou Pearlman died in prison, and no one came to claim the body.
I know.
And so eventually his business contact at the very end before he was arrested came and got him. Five people attended his funeral,
Mm-hmm.
and he's buried in the family plot with no headstone.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get from that level of power, influence, money, all of it? I mean, his network was massive, maybe the biggest network of anybody at that time in the entertainment industry to five people at your funeral.
Yep.
They make the comment in the documentary, it's like a forgotten person. And so
Mm-hmm.
I felt the same way. I felt really sad at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I called my mom because I was telling her what we were recording and everything. And she said, "Well, wasn't there something with sexual abuse?" And I said, not that's covered in the documentary, but I did some additional research around some allegations of that I'll get into today too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there was no charges.
No charges, nothing. All of this would be allegations or
Yeah.
theories that people have had. I'm going to get into that though. So basically, we leave off there, kind of 2001, 2002. Lou starts to have a few issues with his health.
Mhm.
So he had a cyst on his kidney. It got so severe that he actually was bleeding to death internally.
Right.
So when he got discharged, he had a nurse named Tammy Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, she was there 24/7 for a month and a half.
Yep.
And she didn't really know who he was,
Mm-mm.
but she became this really trusted person to him. So he ultimately invited her to fly down for a birthday party and introduced her as his girlfriend, which completely blindsided her. So this is Lou Pearlman. He's head dating his nurse. There's no
Mhm.
actual dating happening. His nurse also was like, he sent me anniversary cards. He tried to kiss me one time. There were no sparks. He was a great person,
He would even tell people that they're dating in front of her.
100%. And I don't get the sense that she like disagreed. I think she just kind of
She just went with it.
she was kind of content to just like go through with it, whatever.
She was like his beard.
She kind of was, I think, maybe his beard. Now there were people who were saying possibly he's gay, possibly he's asexual because they
Yep.
never saw him with anybody.
Yep.
And then there were just some like real general comments about him commenting on boys' bodies. Now he's in charge of two boy bands.
Yep.
So on some level that makes sense because they have a certain aesthetic they're trying to reach, but that
Yeah.
sometimes he would want to see their abs and stuff like that, which struck people as a little weird.
Yeah. I had a thought to that.
Hmm.
It's not a full, well thought out thought. So we'll just go with it. But when I saw that part, I was like, women, it's so different. So if you're like
Hmm.
I just watched the Dallas Cowgirls.
Oh gosh,
Yeah, the
yes.
Dallas Cowgirl cheerleaders. Oh my goodness. They go through so much.
Oh,
But if a coach is like, let me see your stomach, or you got to tighten that up, or whatever, a female coach to another female,
yeah.
it's not seen as weird. or creepy. But for
No.
men, it is.
Well, let's talk about Victoria on Dallas Cowboys Chillers for just 2 seconds.
Right.
I didn't know we would be talking about this today. She's one of the most gorgeous people I've ever seen in my life when she
Yes.
tried out.
Yes.
Initially, I don't know if you've ever seen her when she tried out. She looked amazing. She was healthy. She was
Mhm.
in amazing shape. So she ended up developing an eating disorder, as so
Yeah.
many dancers do.
Yeah.
Not in part because freaking Kelly and what's her bucket will like pinch skin and just they're just it's just icky. And I understand it. They're wearing tiny little booty shorts. Like I get it.
Yeah.
But I can very much understand why someone would have an eating disorder.
Oh,
And when
yeah.
they ever bring up weight with the women, they immediately just crumble and they say things like it's not maintainable. I try
Yeah.
out at this audition weight. I've been, doing whatever to maintain that through audition, but they can't gain more than like 10 pounds, whatever. So anyway,
Right.
yes, I think with women, when that happens, when they're measuring somebody's bust or they're looking at
Yeah.
somebody's butt cheeks hanging out of shorts, nobody's going, Kelly and Judy are lesbian pedophiles. Even if there's like a 17-year-old who's trying out.
Exactly. Exactly.
But also from a predator perspective and from a
Yes.
prevalence perspective, it is more
Mm-hmm.
likely to be a man.
Yep.
And so I
That's true.
think as much as I see the difference, I also think the research would back that up to a degree.
Oh, 1,000%. It was just one of those thoughts that I had that I was like, because at the end of the day, let's like if we're gonna this might be a little much, but if we're gonna call a spade, I do think he did have those attractions. I do think there was inappropriate feelings, 100%. It was just an interesting thought though, because I was like, women, and
Yes.
it is because of
Yeah.
research and all of that, right? But for women, it's just
Yeah.
not assumed
Well, and
at
women's
all.
bodies are talked about like it's no big deal anyway at all times. So
Yeah, right.
there, I'm still mad. I'm still mad from the purity culture episode. Since we're talking about it, I did do a little bit of additional research on that part because in the documentary Dirty Pop that we reference in this episode, they really skirt around it.
Hmm.
And a lot of the members have done the same thing
Hmm.
because he still is very loved. So and I'm going to get into all of his financial crimes, while he hurt so many people, he also created the careers of so many people or contributed to their
Yes.
careers. So he
Yep.
was actually a fairly protected person. No one was in his camp, but people don't speak ill of him lightly either, which is
Hmm.
fascinating because I
Hmm.
think to some folks he really was this benevolent figure. And then it was on the backs of all these other people who are putting money in. So I'm going to get into that, but I just wanted to kind of mention that Aaron and Nick Carter's mom has been pretty clear that she warned people about Lou, that Lou had an impact on her sons. She doesn't say more about it because she says it might impact her relationship with Nick.
Mm.
And Aaron Carter, he overdosed, right? He died.
Yeah.
Aaron Carter died.
Yeah, it was either suicide or overdose or a mix of
Hmm.
both.
And so we know that in that population, there's a pretty high incidence of trauma. And you've alluded to Nick having some issues as a young man, also in terms of how he
Hmm.
conducted himself. So, could there have been something? Again, we have children in a vulnerable position.
Hmm.
So if it were to happen, it would make a lot of sense to me in a setup like this. They're at his house, they're getting wined and dined, they're dependent on him completely, and he's the only person that can make their career happen. So that is where abuse is pretty prevalent anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I didn't read, like you said, there's no formal charges, there was no trial, that's not what he got in trouble for.
Right.
And I think people sometimes that I assumed, and I've heard this from other people, that he went to prison because he took money from band members or he embezzled money or, something like that.
Hmm.
No, it is a full-blown Ponzi scheme that I'm going to get into.
Oh
Full,
yeah.
but none of it was in the sexual abuse realm. So it's just
Right.
interesting. It was really financial crimes that took him down.
Right.
Okay, so let's go back. We got a little jumbly, but let's go back. He invited the nurse down for his birthday party. This is my girlfriend. right? And everybody's looking at him like, okay, Lou, including her. She's
Right,
like,
right. She's like,
okay, Lou. And really, he sent her all the anniversary cards. I mean, they acted like they were together.
he
And
bought
made,
her like Louis Vuitton purses.
I mean, if I'm her too, it's like, hey, if I got to see you 2 times a year and you don't even kiss me and you're going to get me a Louis Vuitton, I mean, sure, I'm your girlfriend.
Why,
Great.
yeah,
How many
why
cards
not?
every year? I don't
I'm
know.
good with it.
I mean, it's a little bit weird to me, but she really, I think, cared for him a lot. They didn't have a actual relationship, but
Right,
I think she really loved him in more of a friend kind of a way.
right.
Um, he has this kooky personal assistant, Mandy Newland, who is just kind of a battle axe. Like she's just this
Mm-hmm.
older lady, and I think she will not, and she says, I will never say anything bad about him,
Right.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So meanwhile, he's living his best life for the most part. He's still making a lot of money after the bands come out from underneath him, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys.
Uh-huh.
O-Town is still signing. There's still bands behind O-Town, but none of them are as big.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Transcontinental, his parent company, is starting to connect to everything. He's doing partnerships with I listed a few TCBY, uh, different pizza brands, Club Paris, the Orlando Predators. He had
Yeah.
a steakhouse. He owned a Chippendales and basically said he was going to take care of the mothers. The mothers go to Chippendales and the daughters go to the Backstreet Boys. That was something that he
Oh,
said, which is
oh gosh.
just weird and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. 2003, the people around him are kind of weird, realizing that there's the money's coming in and going out kind of in weird ways.
Yep.
And I referenced last week that his contracts with BMG, the record company,
Mm-hmm.
were not really in his favor. He didn't make his money off of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. He made some. I mean, he was taking 43% of their
Wow.
profit, and then
Yeah.
he was paid out to not
Mm-hmm.
be in that contractor role. But that
Yep.
is not where he got the majority of his money.
Nope.
So as he's building the bands, Lou Pearlman is simultaneously building Transcontinental, making all of these brand partnerships, bringing in all of this money. And he gets this idea. I am going to redo downtown Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to make it like the new Main Street America. Like it's going to be where everybody wants to be.
Right.
He called it Church Street.
Mm.
And this was a very, very expensive endeavor. And people were starting to ask, how does he have this much money?
Right.
We all know people where it's like, okay, they're doing all right for themselves. And then they do something nuts, like they buy a second property, they do something, you go, oh, you have money, money.
Right.
Not just like run around shopping money, like you have money. So
Yep.
when he buys this big structure in downtown Orlando to renovate Church Street, that's when that was his moment where I think people start going, wait a minute, you can like buy a portion of a downtown in a major city, like what kind
Right.
of money are we talking about? And what
Right.
everybody would say is, well, he makes all his money off the planes. He buys planes and he leases them out.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's saying, but the wheels are starting to come off, right? And they describe it like a snowball getting bigger and bigger and bigger headed downhill. So
Mhm.
his investments, the things that he was responsible for were starting to get bigger than what the investors were putting in.
Mhm.
Also, the bands, this flashy thing that he was using to bring investors to the table to make him look so successful, separated from him and are moving on and actually having more success now.
Right.
So he's not able to attract in as many people as he was previously.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important because that is what a Ponzi scheme is. A Ponzi scheme is when you use the investments of some people to
Mm-hmm.
create a crazy return in
Mm-hmm.
other people's investment accounts. So it's like a house of cards. Everybody is built on everybody else. And it
Mm-hmm.
only works if everybody keeps their money in and if you
Mm-hmm.
keep bringing people to the table. That's the only way you can afford to do those kind of interest rates. And
Right.
you're just crossing your fingers
That it
that people
works.
don't start withdrawing.
Right.
because it works great until it doesn't. That's a Bernie
Right.
Madoff, everybody else, right?
Yep.
Okay. One of the things that happens to people in Ponzi schemes is the people at the top start to panic.
Mm-hmm.
And that pressure is insane because some people know what's happening and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to have cracks in any kind of scam company,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure is oppressive, particularly for people with high empathy. People with lower empathy, they can ride this out. They don't have as high of anxiety. But people who care about people, this starts to get stressful. So one of his dear, dear friends was named Frankie. And Frankie was with Lou through all the things. I think they were childhood friends. Frankie's mom invested.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Frankie's mom started asking questions about Lou kind of early, but Frankie would
Yeah.
defend him and, you know, didn't want to get into all the stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But he started to get investigated. He's putting these ads out there. People are asking questions. They're wondering about the cash flow. He's meanwhile putting ads out for he targeted senior citizens in
Okay.
some advertisements. And again, he was doing like CDs. And a CD account is a place where you can just park money for, 5 years or something, and it pays a
Right.
higher interest rate than the bank. It's usually
Yeah.
not quite as good as the stock market, but it's safer.
Right.
It's a guaranteed interest rate. So, people are popping money in there. They're going to get the interest eventually, which is not something Lou Pearlman's concerned about at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're dropping their money in there. So basically, Lou Pearlman has to start fighting with the feds eventually, because
Mm-hmm.
what happens is he has basically said that everything is FDIC insured. FDIC insured means the feds will back the bank. So
Mm-hmm.
recently, Silicon Valley Bank went on under. The
Mm-hmm.
feds took care of those people who lost their money in the Silicon Valley situation. So Silicon Valley, all the money was gone fast. They
Right.
they ended up kind of, it wasn't structured correctly, and then people got wind of it, and then everybody started pulling their money out. So then you don't have enough, and basically this happened.
Right.
Banks are to a much lesser degree Ponzi schemes, but the
Right.
only thing that keeps them from being a Ponzi scheme is rules and regulations with the feds
Mm-hmm.
that allows them to be FDIC insured.
Mm-hmm.
So Lou Pearlman basically would forge financial documents. This is really his mastermind. This is how he got loans approved and everything else. He didn't go the normal responsible route. He went
Right.
the Lou Pearlman route. So he just took money, put it here, did that with it. He parked accounts in different places. He hid money. He did all kinds of stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yes. So meanwhile, his buddy Frankie is starting to get thinner and he seems worried, and his mom's picking up on it. And Lou starts defending himself with an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and they get all the way through the suit,
Mm-hmm.
and he decides not to pay the attorney. And the attorney's pay was based on the money from the settlement with
Mm-hmm.
Backstreet Boys and NSYNC.
Yep. And
So
the
he
attorney
was
was big mad.
so that attorney, if you'll remember, Lou Pearlman got 64 million. He got bought
Yep.
out.
Yep.
He was supposed to pay the attorney a percentage of that. So sometimes attorneys will take on clients if they think they can go get a settlement, and they'll agree to represent them for
Yep.
no legal fees, but they'll get a percentage if they win. Well, that's what happened with this.
Okay.
So the thing that put him over the top, I should say his defense attorney was not the defense attorney for his Fed case. It was his defense attorney in the lawsuit with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC.
Okay.
So as the feds are starting to realize something's not making sense, this attorney gets so angry that he's not paid. And it would have been so much easier to pay this attorney. Like he
Oh
had
yeah.
the money to pay this attorney, but he just decided not to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the attorney was
Well, it
pissed.
was ultimately his undoing.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was ultimately his undoing. And so a few people talked about in 2006, there was a dinner, and at that dinner, Frankie is really starting to struggle. And Frankie and Lou are kind of getting into it. Frankie got like sloppy drunk. And then people start, because they're already suspicious of Lou,
Yep.
they start putting the dots together that, you know what, Lou is doing something that Frankie knows about.
Yep.
And these two are having an argument and they're getting on the outs, right?
Yep.
And Frankie ended up killing himself, which is incredibly sad. By all accounts, he was both a very loyal friend
Yep.
and also really not okay when he found out that people were being exploited in this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I don't know that he had an issue when NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were working their tails off to pay for a lot of adults finer things. But I do know that when he found out about the Ponzi scheme, that he Frankie was not down for that, and it hurt his own mother.
Yeah. Well,
His own
I
mother
think
was invested.
I think that's part of why he was so mad,
Yeah.
is it was hurting his family. But I mean, it's a little crappy that he didn't have that same sense of justice for the boy
hmm
bands,
hmm
but I mean, they were kids. And so I think they just figure like, subconsciously just take advantage of them and make money off of them.
Absolutely. And basically, how this thing started to fall apart, because it was all happening at the same time. Frankie's starting to know things, people are starting to observe changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are also some people are starting to pull a little bit of money out. Not a ton,
Right.
but they're starting to try to withdraw their money,
Yep.
which means he needs more money, more investors to stay solvent.
Yep.
So, 3 months after Frankie's death, he ends up leaving the country with one of the performers from the band Natural.
Mm-hmm.
They go on this trip to, I don't, where'd they go now? Fiji, somewhere like that, somewhere very
Oh yeah,
tropical.
I don't
Bali, I think it was Bali actually.
maybe.
But they take this trip and they're leaving town, and this poor sucker, this Michael character, he was in Natural. He ends up being Lou's BFF at the end there, which was a real bad time to be the BFF. Like you show up at the 11th hour and you get to claim him at the morgue. Like, I mean, it just was not
Right.
a good scene, right? So
Right.
Michael goes and Michael's like taking video of them, and I don't think he was as oblivious as he pretended to be, but I don't think he knew everything. I really
Right.
don't.
Yes.
Okay, so they're over in Bali. The FBI raids the properties,
Mm-hmm.
raids properties. They're going through everything like they always do. And once that happens, I mean, the wheels come off financially. Everybody's trying to withdraw their money. And then
Yep.
there's a list of debtors, just a
Yep.
list. And so one of the people who investigated also, who's really interesting, was Helen Huntley. She was
Mm-hmm.
a local financial reporter. And people were asking her for advice because she's from Orlando. People, well, in that area, she's in that area of Florida. People were asking for advice about these CD accounts that have
Right.
this higher interest rate than the bank. And that's when she was like, this makes no sense. And so she's one of the people who put things in motion to start falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, the wheels are coming off. Helen Huntley is like, this makes no sense. People are pulling their money out.
Yep.
People in his team had invested. People like Frankie's mom had money in there. I mean, it's just really terrible. And
Right.
everything gets rated too. It's not just I had pictured like office space. They
Mm-hmm.
raided that whole downtown space. They took out boxes of evidence, took out a safe out of his house. Everything had been cleaned out. And within a couple of weeks, they have a total
Mm.
understanding of how deep this thing runs.
Yeah.
And people are losing their life savings. And if it is not Fed FDIC insured, which these were not,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get your money back,
Right.
right? And Michael makes the comment, and I thought, I want to know what you think about this, Nat. So if you're Michael, you don't really know what's going on. Lou's acting a little weird, but they're in Bali, and Lou is a little weird. So I don't think
Yeah.
Michael thought too much of it.
Yeah.
But Lou was having Michael pay for everything. And
Yes.
it was because all the accounts were frozen.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
What do you think about the fact that Lou, with Michael sitting there, forged a seal for a German bank and applied for $1 million loan and was approved on the spot from Bali? I mean, what are you thinking at that point? Because I'm like, okay, we
Well,
knew this was going to come apart.
right. Well, what's crazy is so when Lou was a kid, he had such good penmanship. He could draw
Yep,
the driver's license back then. He could freehand them.
which is insane.
So for him to do the same thing for this loan,
Mm-hmm.
nuts, because that's what he did, I believe, is he hand
Oh,
did it
yes, he
all of it.
hand drew the German bank seal
Yes.
to get this loan.
Yes. So it's just crazy because and what's the other guy's name?
Michael,
Michael.
his travel buddy who did not understand what was happening.
Yes. And for Michael to see it and like he knew it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
if I'm putting myself in his shoes, I would bail right then. Like bye.
Michael needed to run like he was on fire, and
But
he didn't.
he was probably a 6 on the Enneagram,
Could
Michael,
be. Yeah, I could see that.
because of the loyalist piece.
Uh-huh.
So he like stays, he knows it's wrong, but he's like, oh boy, here we go. Like, I don't know. Maybe he thought in that moment, I'm already in it. And Lou has been using his cards and changed his name.
Oh, yeah. What did he sign in as? I put it in my notes.
I don't remember, but he used Michael's last name, I'm pretty sure.
He did. It was something incognito.
Yes. Incognito Johnson or something.
Incognito Johnson. That's
Yeah.
what it was. Incognito Johnson. Yeah, and this poor sucker. I mean, Michael's using his credit card for Bali, and
Everything.
Lou's gonna, handle it all. He probably had been paying his way, but mm-mm.
You know what this reminds me of? And I'm sure I don't know if we would get to this at the end. This reminds me of Anna Delvey.
Yes, yes, very much so.
It's like the same thing.
And it's incredible what you can get away with if you are really ballsy with low anxiety, which again is a little bit of a psychopathic trait. I don't think
Yeah.
Lou Pearlman was a psychopath. I want to be very clear.
No.
But it's a psychopathic trait to be kind of unbothered.
Yep.
And that is what some of these really good con artists are able to do.
Yep.
Because you and I would be terrible we cannot lie.
No.
Because we're normal people. We have empathy,
Right.
But
Right.
when you think about some of the really good con artists, man, they can look you right in the eye.
And
They
do the
can
thing.
find somebody else's name and act like it's just another day.
Yep. I know. It's wild. I'd be sweating so bad all the time.
Mm. So when the investigators got all of this information, they decided to go get him. They had some agents watching him. They find him in Bali. He turned 53 while he was locked up on Guam before he came back to the US. All of the travel is tied back to Michael because Michael was paying for it. So Michael ends up at least involved in the investigation. He wasn't charged with anything, but he was involved in the investigation, which would be highly stressful. And then as they're looking at the companies, they're realizing he had a relationship with the attorney general in Florida. So some old lawsuits had been thrown out. And every single thing that he built for like almost 40 years was a front for these investments. Everything was the investments.
Yep.
Now, one interesting thing is he pled guilty. He didn't fight the charges. Now, obviously, he probably had a decent plea agreement. That's what I'm thinking. But he pled guilty.
Yep.
And that attorney that he could have just paid his due when he won all that money said to him, "You should have paid me, you asshole."
Mm-hmm.
which is such an attorney thing to say.
I know.
And I feel sad for that attorney because what a hard way to live. Like just angry. And listen, I can hold a grudge. We've already talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I just think about the yuckiness of that anger for all of those years and being that obsessed. But you know what? You do you. He got to
Right. Well,
get his word in
and
after all
he's
those
not
years.
wrong, but yeah, that was a chilly when they said that in the documentary, that was chilly.
Real chilly. So Lou was sentenced to 25 years in prison with a
Mhm.
1 month reduction. Okay, 1 month reduction for each million that he paid back. So they were giving him the because nobody knows how much money he has. That was wild to me too.
Right.
They don't know where his money is, and not one human can actually say how much money he has.
Right.
They don't know. So they're
Right.
like, we're just going to see if maybe he will buy his way out of prison and
Yeah.
meanwhile take care of people.
Yep.
It was interesting. I want to know what you think about his little core team of like the five that ended up at the funeral. His personal assistant, the nurse, Michael, I don't know who else, but it's like five people.
Right.
They were like a little bit shocked at the 25 years. Like they're going, murderers don't even get 25 years, which is inaccurate. But they seemed kind of shook and feel
Mhm.
like they made an example of him. What's your take on the friendships and the that dynamic?
Well, I will say, yeah, like when I heard the 25 years, I was like, dang,
Oh, it's long
it's long. And that is a life, technically life in prison,
for
right? Like,
him, yeah. Well,
yeah.
clearly.
Well, but even when people get sentenced, I thought 25 is like, is equivalent to life. So they'll say like you get 3 life sentences, meaning 25 times 3 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So that for me, I was like, that is like equivalent to someone who maybe has maybe not a murder charge, but like,
Financial. It's economic,
well, right. But
non-violent.
I thought it was pretty steep, if I'm being honest,
Oh, it's steep.
you
It's
know?
steep. It's also like $500 million.
No, I know. It was insane. When I found out how much money he had scammed, I was like, yeah,
It is
he's not
wild.
crawling out of that hole.
But I do think they made an example of him. Like, I think that's a fair
Yes.
conclusion to draw.
Yes.
Now, the Peter guy, he cracked me up. So, this guy named Peter called Jerry Rosen
Hmm.
and told him how much they loved Lou in prison, blah, blah, blah. So, Peter, this dude, had been arrested for RICO, bank fraud, and conspiracy for all of the above.
Okay.
Peter was almost excited to be in prison with Lou. They ended up at the same prison, ultimately ended up in the
Oh,
same
yeah.
arena. Remember that?
Yep. Yep.
But Peter was fangirling over Lou in prison, which is just the most insane thing.
Right.
But Michael talked about getting hundreds of missed calls, voicemails for Lou, and he just couldn't believe anything that Lou said. There was no accountability or sense of shame in Lou, and
Hmm.
Lou didn't make much of an effort to pay people back.
Right.
And I think what they said was he ended up paying back maybe $10 million of the 500 million. So not much. Not many people
Um,
got their money back. And unfortunately, the wealthier people tend to end up at the front of the line because of like legal jockeying and stuff.
yeah.
Also, Lou wrote the nurse several letters from jail saying rappers were auditioning and all this kind of stuff for him in jail, which that I was
Hmm.
like, is he trying to do this again from jail? Because he probably would,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, for Lou, couple of things.
Yes.
Um, you know, his life ended like a forgotten person, which I said, which I think is one of the saddest things.
Yeah.
He ended up defrauding, really stealing from over 2,000 people over
Mhm.
30 years.
Mm.
Is the longest running Ponzi scheme in history.
Yeah.
In history. The Backstreet Boys are interesting because they're all kind of on different pages about Lou, and a couple of them were closer to Lou. in sync, you really hear the most from Chris, and Chris is kind of like, he's a crook.
Mm-hmm.
He was smart. I think everyone involved would say he was really smart. He hurt a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
and also did some occasional good things. And
Yeah.
those good things typically involved helping people with money. So some people are still pretty loyal to him
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the day. So I'm curious, what is your take on Lou
Mm-hmm.
and the impact of Lou and all the crap that he pulled on the people who benefited from him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do with that kind of ambivalence in a relationship? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts on Lou. So it dove a little into his childhood. He was bullied. He was,
Hmm.
he was picked on.
Yeah, they
Didn't
called him
want,
Fat Boy in school, right?
yeah, fat boy. So I think of that, and he really wanted to make something of himself.
Yeah.
And so I think he just took that and ran with it, and then it got ahead of him and he didn't know what to do with it. I'm
Mm,
not trying to excuse what he did, because what he
no.
did horrific to people.
Hmm.
And I think the intention, and this we talked about this in some of our other episodes. I think his initial intention was good. I think he
Yeah.
wanted to help people he cared about. And then, like I said, I think it got away from him. And then, money and power turn people into someone else.
Yep.
And I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so, even going back to my comment about Wicked, knowing the
Yep.
backstory actually helped me have empathy for Lou.
Hmm.
Again, it doesn't excuse what he did. I do think he deserved to be in prison.
Hmm.
I don't think how that attorney treated him was super unfair when he said, "You should have paid me, you asshole," or whatever.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was accurate.
Yeah. And so I don't, I think all that's fine. But knowing his history, it helped me have a little bit more compassion for him,
Yes.
you know? And I do think he at first really wanted to help people.
I think so. One of the things, my my brain goes to my brain goes to just the fact that he would raise these bands up right under each other's noses in
Hmm.
secret. It strikes me that continuum of psychopathy because he's in no way a psychopath from my perspective, and obviously I
Hmm.
don't know enough to make any kind of diagnosis, nor would I. But there is an element of how can you care
Hmm.
so much about these young people, but cut the deals that you did, start another group right underneath, and not feel that because the band members felt it. The people who were at the top of this whole thing with Lou felt it. They felt how ugly this thing was
Hmm.
with the two bands. I don't know how you do that to people who are working that hard. I think while he gave them the good life, he also worked them to the bone initially.
Hmm.
So he built this on their backs.
Yes. Well, he would have them literally sing in the middle of restaurants for
Oh
their
yeah.
investors
Yes.
to get investors.
So it was exploitation to a degree. He
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
had a good plan to get them famous and it worked.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's like an evil person necessarily. Now, if the sexual assault allegations are true, that puts a whole different layer on this in terms of what kind of predator he was exactly.
Absolutely.
So if those are
Yeah.
founded, I mean, then he gets an F right off from me because,
Oh, yeah.
first of all, you don't hurt a child in any way, in my
No.
opinion, but
Yep.
that would actually color this even more
Yeah.
in terms of exploitation. And then you're starting to get into he's no better than a sex trafficker at that point, if that was
Yep.
happening.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know, but like I said, it's hard to imagine in some ways that it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Or at least he kind of struck me as one of those. This sounds so bad. We might have to cut this part out, but
Yeah.
He kind of struck me as one of those who probably had really, really toxic, unhealthy thoughts and desires.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he took it too far or
Right.
took it anywhere. We
Yeah.
had, this is so weird. Um, when Press and I lived over by Sloan's Lake, we had a neighbor across the street who was super grouchy. He was like this old grouchy man.
Hmm.
And you would just hear him like cussing when he would come outside and like cuss at his car, whatever. Well, he
Oh, yeah.
died and his brother came to like get his stuff. And so we were outside one day and his brother was like, "Hey, I have a bunch of stuff like TVs, computers. Do you guys want any of it? Like, I'm literally gonna throw everything away." But some of the
Right.
stuff's actually really like pretty new. So we took a computer and sold it, but we took it to like a pawn shop and we told the guy, we said, we don't know what's on it. We have no
Right.
clue. And the brother said, he was into some weird stuff. Thankfully, we didn't see anything like, related, but there was some stuff on there,
Oh, yeah.
and I think of him and I'm like, I don't think he ever did anything with his
Mm.
own thoughts and, preferences, but people are into weird stuff and they sometimes don't cross those lines,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh,
know?
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping that was him, that he was into weird stuff and didn't cross the lines because he was into weird stuff.
I hope so too. I think Aaron Carter, I don't know Aaron Carter's family history. I know you do.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the issues that have happened in that family, at a minimum, the fame got to them, but it has
Yeah.
a little bit of a trauma feel to it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Aaron Carter, we'll do a whole episode on just him.
Yeah,
And maybe sprinkle some Nick in. They both could have their own episode.
I know. They have a
Uh,
really just hard
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
really hard
Aaron
things.
Aaron's stuff came, I think, more from his family, but I could
Yeah.
be.
So it's an interesting case. I think Lou Pearlman was in so many ways ahead of his time, really smart businessman, but he built it all with some flawed principles and then
Yep.
had to double down.
Yep.
And he had many, many, many opportunities to turn this around and to not take the next check and the next investment and the next this and that. And he just continued to do that. And
Yeah.
when you think about how from 2001 to being one of the only planes in the air with all this influence and sway on a global scale to
Mm.
five people at your funeral, no headstone. I mean,
It's a
it is
big shift.
sobering when
Yeah.
you think about what actually matters in
Yeah.
life and how chasing money in
Yeah.
particular, but chasing
Yeah.
anything at the expense of your life,
Yeah.
no, it's going to leave you with a lot of regret.
Yeah. And no one missing you, no one caring.
Mm-mm. No,
That's the sad part.
it's really sad. It's really sad. So this is kind of a somber one, but I do think it brings up the issue of these financial crimes, which some of the most frightening people I've worked with clinically over the years have been financial economic criminals.
Right.
Because there's just very little concern for other
Yeah.
people and how this impacts them. So it's a pretty devious mind that will take this to this extent. So even though he looks kind of harmless, which I think is what helped him in many
Yeah.
ways,
Yep.
nobody
And super
suspected.
friendly.
Super friendly, kind of like I don't know, just kind of a nerdy,
Hmm.
whatever kind of dude. I don't think people expected him to be doing what he was doing. So he got away
Yeah.
with a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's a reason why if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Like, why were his interest rates so much better than all the banks? Well, you got to ask yourself some questions.
Right.
And people, let's make this one of our takeaways from today. Please read everything that you sign too.
Yes.
I don't know why people don't do that.
I know.
I read every freaking thing. It takes us hours to buy a
Yeah.
car, anything, because I want to read every little thing.
I'll bring you when I buy my next car.
Oh, please do. I have friends who do that. First of all, I'm great at getting a deal.
Perfect.
I will just wait until the number is what we want it to be. And I will leave, I'll go get lunch. I will dip and go to another dealership across the street. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. My
Mhm.
parents are epic car shoppers.
Oh my gosh.
They have a routine that they do.
What is it?
Okay. They'll go in. I've seen this. I've seen this so many times. I can't even tell you. It's hilarious. We go into the dealership. My mom will carry like a nice bag. She looks lovely as always, right? And my dad goes in looking sour. Okay, they've already agreed on. They know what they're going to do. Okay? But that's not what the performance is. You can't let a car dealer know that you really want to buy this particular car, right? You need
Right.
to go in with a little bit of an attitude. So
Right.
they go in and they're very nice and respectful to everybody. But my dad's like looking kind of over it, and my mom's like, love it. And then my dad will be like, Tina, we can't afford this car. I don't think we can make this work.
Uh-huh.
Like, no, no,
Uh-huh.
no, it's only what I want. I really want it. Okay, well, if we can't, and they will leave. They will always leave. They leave and then they get blown up by the car
Mhm.
salesman and they
Mhm.
always get a better deal.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. And I've watched it over and over again. My parents don't operate that way in the real world. That's not how
Right.
they make
Right.
decisions together. They're great. We've already established my dad's a feminist, but they're hilarious in a car dealership. I
That's
mean,
so
it
funny.
is worth
That's like
seeing.
Schitt's Creek.
No, it really is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and my mom, and I can just see her, she just looks up at him with her little baby blues, and she's just like, okay, well, we'll just go out to lunch then. You're right. Like, we need to just talk about it some more. And I'm like, if you only knew how these things actually work
Oh
in my
my
house.
gosh,
But
that's
it
so
is so
funny.
funny. So Garrett and I, we've tried that. It does not work the same.
Yeah.
It
I
does
don't think I
not.
could pull it off.
We just can't. I can't pull it off.
No.
I'm just a type A-er. So I just sit there like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
I need your best offer. I don't have any time for this. You
Mhm.
got 10 minutes. Make up my mind?
Yep. Yep.
So sorry if you're a car dealer. I am lovely. I just will make your job hard until I get the deal that I want.
I think that's great.
Then we'll be best friends forever. I'll wave at you every time I come in. My
Yes.
car service,
We'll
we're
even
friends for
give you
life.
a shout out on our podcast.
100%. Also, I literally, when I bought our car, our Subaru,
Mhm.
I went with a friend like 2 weeks later and helped them negotiate a car. So if
Yeah.
you take care of me, I'll take care of you. That's
Right,
how that
same.
works, you
Same.
know?
We'll send people your name, we'll send them your way.
Absolutely.
Get you some deals.
We are forever networking.
Yes.
Forever. Well, we're wearing our forensic hoodies today.
We love them
Goes
so much.
out.
You
Hopefully we'll
guys,
be seeing our forensic friends.
they are so comfortable.
They're so comfy
And
and they're
I have to give my sister-in-law, Brittany, a shout out because she wears hers all the time.
all the time and
She's in
so
love with it.
cute. I have the black one, you have the lilac.
Brittany has the yellow, the fall color.
Oh, it's great.
It's amazing.
We're still waiting with bated breath too for the comfort fall line because I think it's going to be just incredible.
I hope so. I need some burnt orange in my life.
You really do. That coral, you know,
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't
see.
know.
I'm holding out for burnt orange. Don't
Burnt orange. I'm
disappoint.
sure they'll comfort do a burnt orange.
Yes, it'll sell
It'll sell. It will absolutely sell.
for fall.
Yeah. We will announce next time we have some things in the works.
Yes.
Speaking of fall that we've been talking about doing. And please, please, please like us on Instagram. Share us with your family and friends. It's been growing like crazy, and we're just really grateful and having a great time.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed Boy Band Ponzi Scheme Part 2.
Yes. We love you, our forensic friends.
See you next week.
Bye.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.